Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
What the hell is going on? Who cleaned my room? Son of a bitch! I had everything where I wanted. Strode! Why the hell did you clean my room?
I didn't clean
How
anything.
did you get in here? Only you could have alphabetized my omnibus. No one else has the upper body strength. I swear, Strode, you touch one more dirty stock. You remove one layer of crud. You kill one more cockroach, and I will personally grind you into fine powder and sprinkle you on Trump's oatmeal. Which, as we know, is a false threat because Trump doesn't eat oatmeal.
Only if they serve it at McDonald's.
Usually when you press a pair of pants and you say, come on, that means we're going to have a guest on our show. So are we?
Why, yes, special guest. Please sign in and introduce yourself to the people.
Are we talking to me now?
Yes!
I can't because someone cleaned my house and I can't find my stuff.
Son of a bitch, that guy strikes everywhere.
Signing in. This is Stephanie Cofell.
Feels
I
so
used to be known as Stephanie Vazo. Yeah, me too. I know, right? Yeah.
I know. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And you've been on the show before.
I have been, yes. I really can't find any of my stuff here. Okay, I think I'm... Okay, I've got a lot of papers and stuff beside me because I was working up until the phone rang, so yes. But yes, I have been on the show before. Once before. It was probably... Was it last year or the year before?
You were on episode 300, and I also have interviewed you.
That's right.
And I believe that may be...
Did we do that live?
No, we did that recorded. Ages
didn't we meet
ago.
For some...
That was episode
we met in the
300.
cities.
That was episode 300.
Ah, that's what it is.
Night of the Mutant Hash Browns.
But you, I believe I'm the only person who has interviewed you for a podcast, other than your
That's
charming
true.
husband.
That's very true, yes.
So people have missed out on one of the great colorists of the 90s.
Missed out?
Yes.
You know what it is? It's really weird, and I know we discussed this long ago in the other podcast, is that a lot of my work I wasn't credited for. It was credited under my ex-husband. Yeah. It happened. And actually, one of the books that I worked on wasn't even credited to us. It was credited to the wrong colorist altogether. And that was actually the Prince comic that came out in, 97, was it? Noelle Giddings was supposed to work on that. She dropped out, and we colored it. And I'm going to turn around really quickly, and Noelle's name made it into the book anyway. We were like, oh, okay. It's still there, too, in the reprint. So.
They have it corrected.
Yeah. Was that the Piranha Press one?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was, I know it was Dwayne McDuffie and...
Yeah. Denny Cohen is artist.
Yes. So we were actually talking about that. We were messaging each other. It was 91. It was 91. It wasn't 97. I don't know why I thought it was 97, but yeah, so.
And I believe, was that 3 Chains of Gold? Was that the name of it?
Alter Ego. Prince Alter Ego.
There's
Alter Ego is what it was.
And then there was another one called 3 Chains of Gold.
Yeah.
No, it was Alter Ego was the one that we worked on.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into more of what you did in the 90s because this is a special episode. No, it doesn't mean that Gordon Jump's going to feel me up in the back of the bike shop.
Well, he might.
Again?
Well, he can't.
Ever since the incident.
Well,
the incident.
he can't feel me up, Joe, because he's dead now.
Well, he'll be cheaper that way.
Yeah.
I'm waiting on the joke. Do I have to do it?
We skipped yours and yeah, go ahead.
Dead? I didn't even know he was sick.
Send me that in emails every once in a while.
But we are going to talk about our favorite comics of the 90s. And Stephanie was actually working in comics in the 90s.
Oh, you should have warned me. I would have picked one of hers. I suppose I can
have
put that
picked at
one on the
least
list.
one of hers.
Suck up. I mean, oh, cool.
Because, and actually I did not know it was one of hers until much, much later in our friendship.
Wait, what?
I didn't
That
know
was before he...
that is on my list until, 2 years ago.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, because it was under under an alias. You were doing work for your spouse and not for yourself.
That's right, because a lot of the stuff that was done for Vertigo, and I know I've mentioned this before, you usually get so many days to turn a book around. Let's say 10 days to 14 days when they were hand coloring, And Danny had Dan Vazzo had 6 monthly books. It's impossible, even if you're up 20 hours a day to color that many books. So they knew he had someone doing it for him. They knew he had an assistant of sorts, and that was me. So, the Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman Game of You with the Barbie storyline and Wanda, that was all me.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
See, Joe, now you
Good
got to
time.
get her autograph.
Well,
What's
it depends. I might have sold them.
Oh.
I sold most of my Sandman collection in the mass purge. And I did keep a few, though, because we lucked out years ago, and at Dreamhaven actually met Neil Gaiman back when he only drew about 100 people to the store. So he actually autographed a bunch, actually got a little sketch from him, which really shocked people because they were like, "You can draw?" He goes, "Well, yeah, sometimes I'll storyboard things." Just does it for himself.
I recently gave away a sketch. And I'm kicking myself because Neil made the sketch for me when I was pregnant with my daughter, Lauren. And I couldn't make it San Diego Comic-Con because I was due that week that the con was going on, so I'm not going to fly 9 months pregnant. And Danny went and brought me back a sketch from Neil and said, "Have a happy baby." And it had the Sandman drawn on it, and he signed it. And I recently gave that to someone who asked me for some stuff because I thought he just wanted me to gift him with stuff, and I did, with a bunch of other comic book cool stuff. And about a week after I gave him this package of stuff in person down in Texas, he calls me and said, "Hey, can you send me some kind of," I don't even know what he was asking me for, authenticity type of stuff. I'm like, "What are you talking about? Authenticity for what? I was given this by this person, and I was given this by this person. Why?" Found he was selling it all on eBay.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah, I thought I was giving it to him as a gift for his own personal collection, and now I'm just kicking myself that I gave him half of the stuff. So I didn't give him any of the authenticity stuff. I was like, "You're not getting anything from me now." So I learned a lesson there, huh?
Yes, comic fans are weasels.
Never be nice.
Yeah, so.
Well,
that was a little disturbing.
Since we've been talking Sandman, I know we've picked, how many did you want us to do, Cory?
10.
So I figure the deal is books that were out in the 90s, and a lot of times I had problems because I had a comic book in that.
See what I said about Joe's internet? I wonder if he's still with us. That says he's still there.
Oh, you can actually see it. Okay.
Yes. I am the what's the best, the producer? The Gary Delabate of the show?
Oh, good. Okay.
Except I'm also the boff.
Wait, I was going to say, is Robin on with us, or that would be interesting to get her on there?
We have no one in a glass booth, and we have completely lost Joe at this point.
Oh, no. Okay.
Oh, this happens so much.
Yes, that's always good. Make it sound like he wasn't just dropped, yeah.
Unless it's funny.
Right. Then just leave him out altogether. It's like trying to call and you ignore him. It's like, yeah, you can't get back in.
So I think what Joe was starting to say was that he had a shop.
That
at the...
in the 80s, no, in the 90s, I had a shop. Oh, you blathering on.
Okay.
That's how my internet works. Cory says best as a button. I fade out so you guys can talk. Anyways, I had to divorce between what was selling well, aka anything from Image, versus things that were actually worthwhile, or things that I had the dreaded 30-day wait, because the one issue would come out and I'm like, oh my God, I got to wait for the next issue. And everybody raise a hand who had Sandman on their list.
Me.
Let me take a look here. I did as well.
You had it on your list.
Yep, I had it on my list.
We'll just talk Sandman. I mean, for me, I don't know how it happened, but I actually had issue number 1. And I think it was just I picked it up because I was like, hey, look, a new Sandman, new comic. And I read it, did not know what the living F was going on, and did not buy another one until I think it was issue 19 was out.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, I was able to go back and pretty much pick up everything pretty quick. And then, of course, what really got me was when we hit Seasons of the Mist, because that was that was almost, I think I bought, wasn't there a weird hardcover out of Sequence? They did that hardcover, and then they went back and started from number 1, I think. And I read that first, and that's what got me to buy everything else. I don't know. The memory goes.
That's cool, though, because 19, that was the Midsummer Night's Dream. That was Charles Vess stuff, and I love Charles Vess. So that was very, very cool. Good place to pick up and then go back and say, oh, okay, let me really, really neat. So.
Yeah, I was able to pick up all the back issues. Cory, how about you? What was your first issue?
I was working at Schindler's, and I picked up issue 1 because Neil Gaiman was working on Miracle Man. And I figured, well, if Alan Moore has handpicked this guy, he's got to be good. And then Sam Keith drew it. And I still, to this day, am a huge Sam Keith fanboy. And so I picked it up from issue 1. And I was kind of digging it because it was like nothing else out there. And then he started, he tied into the Kirby Sandman. And I was hooked. And, I remember I was working at Schindler's, and we got a letter from DC. And I wish I would have kept it. Before issue 8, the first appearance of Death came out. And it was a letter basically from Karen Berger saying, look, this book isn't selling well enough to continue, but we really believe in it. So what we're going to do, we're going to double ship issue 8 at our cost. And we really hope that you show people this book and show people how good it is and try to get the sales up so that it can continue. And Schindler's, of course, they didn't care, but I remember with issue 8, just, putting it in people's faces who liked the stuff that wasn't, two guys punching each other. And then it started to pick up in sales, and then the trade paperbacks came out. And once the trade paperbacks started coming out, then Schindler's jumped on the bandwagon because they saw that the people who were buying the trade paperback weren't regular comic book people. Now, Stephanie, when did you start reading Sandman?
When I began, well, no, not really when I began working on it. I would say number 23. Season of Myths, I think, is where it came. And then I had to go back and find the others, but started regularly reading it after that, and then started working on it, and then everything Vertigo after that. Because I was raising my daughter, like I said, she was born in 93. So if I wasn't working on it at the time, I probably wasn't reading it. That's not entirely true either, because there were things I was reading that other Vertigo titles and stuff. But I would say number 23. I'm pretty sure.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to go round robin, and no, that doesn't mean that the Joker's going to beat him to death with a crowbar. But
I was already with my 800 number.
We'll start with Joe, and then Joe will go to Stephanie, and then to me, and on and on and on until we get all done. So,
Sweet.
Joe, coming in at number 10 was...
Well, mine was... I just basically blew Sandman for everybody, so we only... but and mine aren't in any particular order because, like I said, I had to stop and think, okay, I have down X-Men Age of Apocalypse. And one of the reasons why is because it sold well, but it was customers, listeners, passengers, my life just mixes together. They for the most part, everybody was on board. But change of a whole storyline into alternate versions. In other words, the regular issues stopped, and then here we go with the same characters, but they're altered in such a way, and it's up to us to discover how this Age of Apocalypse differs from the original. And it's a trick they came back to in other ones, and there's another one on my list we'll get to. But it was just kind of interesting because, it started out Xavier's son, Legion, Magneto, ended up killing Xavier, and the goofy crystal we saw way back in, was it 108?
The McCran crystal.
It expanded and preserved the universe while the Age of Apocalypse ran. And then the Age of Apocalypse kept going until they figured out how to switch it back. A few of the characters made it through. But damn, some of the characterizations they did, Sabretooth. I mean, he was really not a psychotic hunter. He had Wild Child kind of under his control. I liked the way they made Cyclops. And it was just, everybody was all excited as to what would be the next book. And even as it went back, as soon as we got the Secret Wars event that just finished up, they brought Age of Apocalypse characters back because it's just something that's thought of fondly. I do got to admit, looking at it now, the art is that super hyper crosshatch everything type image art. Makes it a little hard to watch and read, but it was just something that I enjoyed, and even to this day, I do think of quite fondly. Steph?
Boy, oh boy. I don't have mine in any particular order either, and I was trying to think of just 10, and I came up with an 11th one that wasn't something that I worked on because it was such a big deal at the time. So having, worked during the 90s on almost all Vertigo line stuff, and Archie stuff, Archie's comics, Sabrina, Archie's Weird Mysteries, I worked on all of those, Sonic the Hedgehog. One of the first, I'm trying to think, if my daughter Lauren, we brought her to a comic shop in Hackettstown, New Jersey. Every week, pick up our comics every week that we weren't getting shipped. We had a lot of comp packages and stuff that come to the house, but the stuff that we liked, the stuff we wanted to read, or just go visit with other comic fans and talk with Josh, the owner there. It was the Death of Superman time. So that was a really big deal, and she was, how old was she when that happened? I mean, she was tiny.
Well,
and she knew what was going on. We were...
Fall of 92.
No, she was all of 92, because she was born in 93, but that was still a big deal then.
Yeah.
Because it was the death and return of. So we would talk about it in the store, and it was just such a big deal at the time in the early 90s. And her first word was actually Archie, which I always found really funny. Wasn't Mom, wasn't Dad, it was Archie. Archie. And she was like, Archie. I was like, wait, what? Okay, then. But so I would have to say that book, that whole story, what kind of happened. I mean, you all remember what happened when people would stop reading comics years before. It was huge. It just exploded. The story exploded. People were like, killing off Superman? Oh, my God. So I had to kind of, again, not in any particular order, but if we're going from 10 to 1, I put that at the bottom because it wasn't something that I was working on at the time, but it was just such a big deal. Not even just in the country, just worldwide. And it kind of put this comic book shop, this little comic book shop in Hackettstown, New Jersey, back on the map, and it was really big. It was a really big deal, so, yeah.
Coming in at number 10 for me, as I do the Casey Kasem part, coming in at number 10 is a long-distance dedication. No, it's Kingdom Come. Mark Waid and Alex Ross, their reaction to Image in a lot of ways. It's set in the future where the DC heroes have been replaced by a bunch of violent heroes who are get into fights and don't care about the consequences. And how will Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman kind of restore order and bring things back? It was the second big thing by Alex Ross, the fully painted art, the hyper-realistic art, and Mark Waid brought a humanity to it that it desperately needed, as well as in unbelievable amounts of continuity. Mark Waid in the 90s, in a lot of ways in my mind, was kind of the keeper of the kind of the keeper of comics being fun and not being death, pain, horror, everybody's the Punisher sort of thing. And this, if you go back and read it now and understand that it was their reaction to Image, it has a lot more power, I think, as to how not just the creators felt about it, but kind of how the characters would have felt about it had it been in their world. It's stayed in print since it was printed in the prestige format, and it's a book that I go back to often. I really loved Kingdom Come. Joe?
One for me, I think it started in the 90s but continued into the 2000s, is the Starman second series by James Robinson. Well, it says Tony Harris, but he only stayed hard till 17. Again, this is one that I think I started probably, I'm trying to find it here. I didn't start with one. I mean, of course, I had it in the shop, and it's just one that grew and became hot where people were actually interested in what was going on. Essentially, it started with the two sons of Ted Knight, and I think the first one is he is Starman, and he gets killed off in issue 1, and that is what makes his son Jack kind of become and Starman. Well, he didn't really embrace the costume. He had the wand. Ties in with the JSA. Ties in with every other Starman that's ever won from first issue's one shot in the 70s. Just a fabulous run all the way to the end. And when he gets to the end, he basically gives up Starman. And I don't know. That was during the Blackest Night. I don't know if he's ever been seen again. You know, you'd think they'd come back and say, well, he's coming back because things are so bad in this crisis. But I'd have to Google it and see if he ever did reappear, because I think he took off to take care of his daughter, which if you want to know about it, you can read it. I don't know. I'm running through the list. Thank you to the friends on tomicavenue.com. I think they have all the paperbacks that have the whole series. But I'm trying to see if there were any omnibuses of this. And if
they did do omnibuses, but more the DC omnibuses like 10 years ago, where they're smaller.
Not the ones we used.
Not the huge ones, but the smaller ones.
Be a foundation wall, load-bearing wall or something. So yeah, hopefully they come around. DC, we've been giving you. We just put this money on the table for these guys. Do this set. Otherwise, I could run out. They got 6 deluxe sets that has up to issue 81. I'm trying to see if the regular trades go that far, but it was a fun series. Again, probably because I owned the comic shop, I was able to run back and get it. None of the books have kept their price, so you should be able to go find these for fairly inexpensive. October 6, 2018, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, the one-day wonder. They're taking dealer apps now, and of course tickets go on sale September 1st, mcbacomiccons.com. I have to throw that in there once or twice. What do you got next, Steph?
My list. We're still doing no particular order, and I'm sorry there's so much vertigo here, but this is what I was pretty much working on. Books of Magic. I know it was just a 4-issue miniseries, and I know it was Neil's again, but particularly was book 3 because of Charles Vess. Again, I'm a big Charles Vess fan. I loved the idea behind. It's funny because we were reading these, Tim Hunter and the Boy Magician and all this, and a few years later, Harry Potter comes out, and I went, wait a second, and it struck me as a little interesting. So he has a little scar on his head, and I was like, oh, interesting stuff here. And just the relation between the Books of Magic and I think it was called the Childrens Crusade.
Yes.
Okay, because we were working on that at the same time, or it wasn't the same time. It was. Everything's kind of a blur when you have a newborn. You're working on comics and you're trying to get meet your deadlines and stuff. But the Children's Crusade series also was Peter Gross, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but yeah. So just a great storyline, great ideas behind the occult and all that. So it was really good stuff.
I remember at the time DC was pushing it as this is going to be the rules of magic in the DC universe. And then,
were they really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they moved it over to Vertigo and ignored it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know that.
We've always talked about Money on the Bank that they've left behind because they made Tim Hunter up as he's either going to be the greatest magician ever or the biggest threat ever. And they never went back to that. You know, I guess in book, it was Book of Magic, and then Books of Magic was the series.
Yes.
Right.
Which they've reprinted one trade of, which they did the Children's Crusade, and then that, which is how I've been reading it. I don't know if they cover that again. They kind of alluded to it a little bit in the New 52 universe. So, you know, being that they've kind of put all the characters together, maybe we'll see that come to fruition. But just one of those things that a great setup, and they never really did a payoff, at least not in the DC universe.
Huh. Interesting. I can see them doing that, so yeah.
The next book on my list is another Alex Ross book, and this one is Marvels. Marvels is different from Kingdom Come in that Marvels retells the story of the Marvel Universe up until the end of the Silver Age from the point of view of kind of a regular person, a newspaper reporter. And it tells the Silver Age, it tells the Golden Age stories, does a beautiful job of telling the Human Torch Submariner fight, which ended with a tidal wave destroying New York City. I've just recently been rereading those stories in the old Golden Age books, and damn, they're batshit insane. But it retells the story of what it was like to be kind of a person in the Marvel Universe when the Fantastic Four showed up, when Spider-Man was on TV, when Galactus showed up, the Kree Skrull War. And it's a love letter to the Marvel Universe, again, beautifully painted by Alex Ross. And it kind of cements the feeling that a lot of fans have, that the death of Gwen Stacy was in a lot of ways the end of an era, that everything grew darker after Gwen died, that things just weren't as good after Gwen died. And Kurt Busiek talked a few times about doing a sequel to it. Alex Ross never did, because to him, the Marvel Universe wasn't fun anymore after Gwen died. He didn't enjoy it, so he didn't want to do it anymore. And this book is just a love letter to the Marvel Universe up to that point. And again, it can be reread over and over and over. This is the book that introduced Alex Ross to comic book fans. And it's really rare that somebody can do one project and they become a huge star. Alex Ross did this project and instantly was a huge star. It even made Kurt Busiek a huge star. And he talked about how he should have managed his career a little better afterward. But he did kind of take the same idea of Marvels and turned it into Astro City, which is what's it like in a superhero universe for characters who aren't the main focus of that universe. So Marvel's very, very high up on my list. Joe?
I was going to say my next on my list was going to be Death Maid. Oh, God.
He's gonna puke. He's gonna puke.
Oh. That's a taste that don't go away. But I'm going to cheat and go with Infinity Gauntlet because that came out in 1991. See, the stars are aligning with me. And the whole fun thing with the Infinity Gauntlet was, and I didn't realize this until I read some stuff behind the scenes, nobody used Thanos as a character since he died. Was it 80s or 70s?
Late 70s.
Yeah, at the end of Marvel 2-in-1, because that was a Jim Starlin story. He killed it. It was over with. End of story. And then he suddenly shows up again in a Silver Surfer, oddly enough, written by Jim Starlin. He might have done the art too. I don't have Silver Surfer up.
It was Ron Lim.
Oh, Ron Lim. Cool. Because the whole storyline just started where, you know, Thanos was back. He kind of putzed around with Drax and Silver Surfer, and then he dumped Silver Surfer on a a planet where his powers didn't work, and because he was powerless, he was fined and had to go to some kangaroo court. While that kept him busy, there was a 2-issue book because it was an insane $4.95. Back then, comics were $2.50. So who the hell was going to buy this?
No, they were $1.50. They were $1.50 back then. Yeah.
I remember telling people in the shop, "Hey guys, Thanos just became the most powerful member in the universe." No, nobody's cared. Nobody cared. Lo and behold, he came back, putzed around with Silver Surfer, threw him through Doctor Strange's wall in Silver Surfer 50, and then, of course, Infinity Gauntlet started. And, oh my God, people are going crazy looking for Thanos quests because nobody bought them. And even now, you can find mint copies as high as like $30, $40 because nobody was paying attention to what was going on. And then by the time the Infinity Gauntlet hit, when all its mandatory crossovers, it was beautiful. I mean, Jim Starlin writing it. George Perez got through the first 3 issues, and then by issue 4, definitely issue 5, he petered out. Ron Lim finished it. So even to this day, when you go to read it, it's kind of a disjoint, feeling because the art changes. Not to distract Ron Lim, but Ron, George Perez. And even to this day, I've got my I had it, my omnibus. My daughters are reading through it now. But when they went to do the movies, they always showed a copy of the Gauntlet, the Infinity Gauntlet omnibus, and it was basically their Bible. The movie was just so phenomenal. That, and it was just, we'll never see a run of movies like that again, where they all lead up over a course of 18 movies, over 10, 12 years, to this big finale. We're only halfway there. We got like 2 more movies to go before it's over. But the Gauntlet was a lot of fun. It went into the Infinity War. And, of course, I spent a lot of time explaining to people, no, don't read the war. Just don't let the names throw you. And then it went into something called Crusade, which we don't talk about much. So that was definitely, that was the beginning of the 90s. And that was a big one. I mean, you just could not wait. You had to wait 30 days for it to happen. And now, of course, my daughters can just read my omnibus and get it all done in one. And they just don't know what we had to go through.
I may have told this story already. Starlin brought back Thanos, but Steve Englehart wanted to bring him back earlier for a story in the Silver Surfer. And when he pitched it, editor-in-chief Tom DeFalco said, and this should be emblazoned on for all eternity, who?
Who?
Who? So
long as they don't forget a guy named Joe.
Well, it's Ditko's last story at Spider-Man, so probably not.
Oh, he did come back and fight Captain America, so. Oh, well.
Stephanie, next on your list is?
This is going to be one of those going in circles, like in your brain things, like how the heck is she connecting these dots? Basically, it's going to be like, what is that Kevin Bacon game that people play?
6 degrees is Kevin
6
Bacon?
degrees? So
I
didn't know if it was 6 or 7, but it might be 3. Bacon. So what is on my list is Lobo. I love Lobo, the comic. Gibson's anti-hero was great. What's that?
Oh, fantastic stuff. I mean, just crazy violence and just silliness.
Right, ripping people's heads off and stuff, right? It was crazy violence, but I love the anti-hero, the idea of that, right? But specifically, the 1994 RoboCop parody, it was like a RoboCop parody. They did like LoboCop, and that was colored by Digital Chameleon, okay? Digital Chameleon, when did they start? Digital Chameleon started in 1991. Okay. We were still hand-coloring comics in 1991, at least I was. The DC Comics began, they brought the digital coloring to DC. It's funny because DC Comics is in New York City, they're in Manhattan. But they opened up an outside, they basically rented a space by Shea Stadium. The year the Mets won the Super Bowl? I don't know, it's baseball. And so they
I thought that was WrestleMania.
I have no idea. Mets, I don't know, it's sports, but
By the way, Shea Stadium, named after the famous guerrilla leader, Shea Stadium.
Fantastic. So they opened up this outside office by Shea Stadium in 1986. And the reason I remember that is because that's the year that the Mets got into the World Series, and they hadn't won since like 1969 or something. So it was a really big deal to be near Shea Stadium in 1986. But DC opened this place up, and they brought computers in. Everybody's like, what the hell is this? Digital tablets and digital pens. And we're like, what is all this? At DC Comics in Manhattan, we had Bob LaRose in production where you sat and you cut and you pasted and used rubber cement and you used bleach to clean up mistakes with a little, nylon paintbrush and all this kind of thing. So I knew that digital coloring was out there, but I had never seen anything quite like the digital coloring that Laverne was doing with Digital Chameleon. So out in Winnipeg, he was out there. So RoboCop being this riff on RoboCop, okay, and there is an actor in RoboCop that I absolutely love, Ronnie Cox, and so I love RoboCop, but I also love this show that Ronnie was on back in the 90s now, called Cop Rock. I think it was a show of the early 90s called Cop Rock. You know the show, okay.
Yes.
I love the show. I thought it was hilarious. It was like a musical of, how would you, just think of a cop show like Chips or something, or Hill Street Blues.
It was
like that,
created by the creator of Hill Street Blues, Stephen Baccio.
Ah, okay. See, that makes sense. But, okay, so we're going in circles, right? So you've got Lobo, RoboCop, Cop Rock, and you go back, you're like, okay, Ronnie Cox, who's that? That's the guy who played the guitar, that scene in Deliverance with the kid that's playing the banjo,
Yeah.
Ronnie and I are friends now. So, yeah, because my husband's a musician. Okay, let me tell the story really quickly. We go to these music conferences that Ronnie goes to. And, of course, I had to walk up to him and, I loved you. Everyone's like, oh, I loved you in Deliverance. And he starts telling us all of these background stories to the filming of that and how he got that job and how that kid isn't really playing the banjo and all these stories, like what was going on the set at the time, like that's so cool. And I mentioned Cop Rock to him. He's like, no one remembers that show. And I know the theme song and I'm singing it. And he's like, you're hilarious. He tells me a story that he met Mary, his wife, when they were in junior high school. They were 14 years old. They fell in love. They married right out of high school. They moved to New York. He wants to be an actor. He's a starving actor. But he's a musician, and he's not making money acting. He's not making music playing. And he sees an ad in the paper for this movie called Deliverance. And they're looking for an actor who can play guitar. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go. He was pretty much the only person who showed up that could actually play. He wasn't going to fake his way through it. He could play. And that's how he got the job. His first acting job was Deliverance. And he got the job, and he played, guitar in the movie, and he, started getting all these other jobs from that movie. Well, he and Mary were married for 50 years, and Mary got sick, and Mary died. And Mary and I were pretty much the same size. So when Ronnie met me, he said, after we talked about Cop Rock and Deliverance and RoboCop and Star Trek, he's not Star Trek, Captain Jellicoe. I'm a big Star Trek fan too. So we're talking about all these things that we have in common, things that he, performed in, things that I watched him in that I loved and always loved his acting and got to know him a little better. And when we're done talking, he said, can I give you a hug? You're the same size my Mary was, and I miss her terribly. Can I give you a hug? And I said, absolutely. So he gave me a big hug. And for the rest of the conference, we were in this hotel for 5 days with all these musicians and producers and record labels and all this. Every time we saw each other in the halls or anywhere, walking by, getting into the elevator, he'd give me a hug. So this became a thing a couple of years ago, where everywhere Ronnie Cox is in the same room as I am, we stop whatever we're doing, whoever we're talking to, and we slow-mo walk towards one another and we hug. I mean, this happens about 20 times a day now, okay? It turned into a thing where people now know, because the first time it happened, they were like, what's going on? It's my wife. What are you doing? People shout across the room, hands off, Cox, that's his wife. So Lobo somehow turns into the story about Ronnie Cox because of RoboCop, that one particular issue. And Keith Giffen and Laverne Kinjerski and coloring and comics and Digital Chameleon. And Yeah, so somehow that all makes this story full circle. I put this together. This is how my brain works. So yeah.
And if you want
Hands off, cop. That's my wife.
You can get it for $1.99 on the eBays.
Really? Oh my gosh. Really?
Yeah,
I don't even have it. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that right now.
Well, next on my list is one that's not going to cause anybody to hug anyone. And that
Hands
is...
off, cop.
And that is Sin City by Frank Miller. Sin City by Frank Miller was what Frank Miller kind of did after he finished up doing Batman at DC. He went over to Marvel, he did an Elektra graphic novel, and then he went over to Dark Horse to start a company called Legend, which was a bunch of older creators' response to Image. Notice how everybody's responding to Image. And what it was, Frank Miller wanted to do Raymond Chandler-esque crime novels. At the time he was doing Dark Knight, he was enamored of crime novels. Reading them, he's talked in interviews about how he was devouring Mickey Spillane's stuff and all the other Black Mask writers. And Sin City really just sort of encapsulated that in comic book form. But the other thing it did, Miller completely changed his art style. He invented a new art style where it was almost like the pages were opposite. The characters were defined by bright lines on black paper rather than black lines on white paper. And he used color very sparingly. You know, in That Yellow Bastard, one of the characters who had jaundice was colored yellow. He would have red at times, but mostly it was black and white. Huh. And yes, there have been 2 movies based on it, but the other thing that I like to point out is Jim Lee loved that art style so much that he stole it for the character Deathblow. Because I remember when Deathblow came out and looked at it, it was, wow, Lee really, really likes Frank Miller's Sin City, doesn't he? Sin City is a crime novel as a comic book. And that and Ms. Tree, in my opinion, started the big boom in crime comics coming back. Love those books. Joe, next on your list is...
Cerebus. And of course, I'm only dealing with the 90s, so, started in 77 and ended in 2004. This would be the end of Jaka's story going into the going home story. And of course, it would also include the Hero, which I have a nice story for, because there was a crossover of sorts into Spawn. When Spawn started out, and Spawn almost made it on my list, but that was more because it was selling like crazy. And I think Todd got to the point where he realized he wasn't much of a writer, so he got 4 writers to jump in and do a story for him. And we've talked about a couple of them. Alan Moore did one to a story to this day. I believe it's Cerebus 8. I read and it just gives me the chills because the concepts Alan pulled out and Todd drew. Of course, Neil Gaiman was there. And of course, that led to a bunch of lawsuits later on, but we're not here to talk about that. I believe one, didn't he? I don't remember, but Miller?
Yes.
And then he did one with Dave Sim, where basically, and I don't think this has ever been reprinted because for whatever reason, it's kind of a dream parody. It's a smack on the comic industry. The fact that Spawn and Cerebus are free, whereas other characters such as, you can tell it's Superman, The Thing, Spider-Man, they're shackled because they're not with their original creators. And when Cerebus wakes up, or not Cerebus, when Spawn wakes up, he thinks it's all a dream. Now, I sold probably upwards of like maybe 125 Spawn a month. I sold 5 Cerebus books. So I did this thing where if you bought a Cerebus, or you bought the Spawn 10, I'd give you a coupon, and you turn it in when Cerebus 0 comes around, and you can get a free of it. The idea being to get you exposed to Cerebus, and maybe if you like it, buy it, and of course, vice versa. Cerebus sales went from 5 to 7, and I think the highest that ever went was like 12. Meanwhile, Spawn kept going down and down and down, and we've talked about it in the past, the numbering thing, the storylines, whatever. I actually talked to Dave Sim at one of the Cap City shows and showed him the coupon we used and the thing, and he said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Just try to get it out there. And I know that the other hot comics, laughed at me because, oh, look, you got tons of Cerebus 0 lying around, and it's like, yeah, whatever. It was used as a freebie, except the gold edition. I kept a few of those and then blew them out on eBays later on, but because back then eBay wasn't around. Remember, eBay didn't start until 97, so yeah, I know when you bought these books, a lot of them, like I said, the Starman, yeah, it went up because it was in demand. And now that the eBays have kind of evened it out, years later, it's kind of gone down because I don't think anybody remembers Starman. And I don't, Cerebus, if you're interested, you don't go out and buy the original issues. You buy the phone books, they call them, the graphic novels. You don't even start with the first one. You start with High Society if you really want to give yourself a treat. Cory likes Cerebus because he said one of the coolest thing, it had the best letter column of all time. And so buying the early issues was actually fun. I actually owned an original #1 at one time that was signed by Sim, again, out at Dreamhaven. Sold it, which I didn't because now the near mint ones are upwards of $3,000. There are counterfeits out there, so be careful. I just was worried because I said I come up to Dave Sim and you'd look at me and go, oh my God, that's a counterfeit. Sorry. But he'd go, nope, to Joe, an original Cerebus owner or genuine or whatever. So if you see a copy of that, let me know because I'd love to buy that back someday. So, but Cerebus was one. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed the letter column. I own it to this day in the book format because I pretty much blew out all the individual issues. Because I'm an old fart. I want to read the book. I don't want to dig through 25 long boxes, put it together.
I loved Cerebus until issue 186.
Was that the infamous rape issue?
Nope, that is the issue where women are a dark void that devour all creativity issue. And then Rick's story was good, but Going Home, where it's, we're getting long essays about Oscar Wilde. Make it stop.
What did at issue 200 in 2004?
No, 300.
You're right. That was the first guy to do it nonstop.
Stephanie, next on your list.
More Vertigo. Surprising, right?
What a shock!
Death, the high cost of living. Few reasons here. Also, this is actually a personal, very personal reason. Tori Amos. You're aware of the relationship there between
yes.
Tori and Neil, and okay, and I'm not sure if listeners are, and Delirium is from the Endless is the character is loosely based on Tori, and she's, she mentions Neil in her songs and this and that. And I'm pretty sure that they're the godparents for each other's kids and all this kind of thing. They have a personal friendship as well. Death to High Cost of Living. And this is super hard to find. There was an 8-page public service announcement called Death Talks About Life. Have you ever seen this?
Yes.
Yes, where she uses a banana in a very creative way with Constantine.
Correct. Okay. Anyway, it's a PSA about HIV and AIDS. And my aunt, my mother's sister, was diagnosed with AIDS in 1990. Give me a second. My daughter was about to be 7, so 1999 or 2000. Her boyfriend had been running around on her, and that's how she found out. So my aunt is still alive, believe it or not. This is my mother's sister. My mother ended up dying in 2004, and my aunt is still alive. So there's kind of a little weirdness there for me that, because at the time, HIV/AIDS, it was a death sentence, right? You were going to die. There was no cure. There was no way you were going to survive this, and she's still with us. So just having that PSA in there, having that banana, having that, I don't want to get political. Do you remember when the book came out and the band played on?
Yes.
And the whole thing about AIDS, and it was a gay man's disease, so we didn't care. Hey, a bunch of gay guys are going to die. They probably deserve it. That was kind of the attitude. So the fact that DC was willing to put this out there, and in a comic book format to get through to more people, I guess, to reach more people, and it wasn't just a gay man's disease. I just thought that was really impressive for them to do that. And, they didn't put it into a Lobo book, right? They didn't put it into the Childrens Crusade. They put it into Death, the High Cost of Living. And, the character, each one of those endless characters is based on someone, and we know who Sandman was based on and where he got his look from and who that was supposed to be. And the person who Death was based on, she just died this year, Cinnamon Hadley. So all of that stuff, the Sandman, the Death, the Endless, all of that, the Vertigo series themselves, but that just had a really big impact on me. The story itself and that PSA coming out in the 90s was a pretty big deal.
Also released as a standalone, Death Talks About Life. So, not only was it in the various DC books, but it's also an individual one, which again, you can go buy on eBay if you want.
Oh, see, I'm going to have to go back on eBay. I'm going to close that window.
You find it for like $1.50, and then higher grade ones graded. But I mean, just alone to the way Constantine was acting when Death, do you have it? Yeah, I do. And he's just real embarrassed, obviously. She's just, whatever. We're here talking about stuff.
Just the whole safe sex thing, it was just the stigma attached to that at the time, in that day, and no one else was doing that. So just the fact that they released this AIDS awareness, and it's super important, transmission, and, don't eat off the same fork as someone, those things that we were hearing back then that were just wrong, and the stigma attached to that. I just found that that Karen was to put that out there, and I think Vertigo making that, creating that line suggested for mature audiences was probably one of the best things DC had ever done. And at the time. DC 52, baby. Just kidding.
The other thing I remember about that miniseries was that was kind of where, in my mind, Chris Bachalo developed his style. Because looking at the stuff he did before that, it really kind of looked a lot like the other Vertigo stuff. But in Death, the High Cost of Living, Bachalo developed that sort of almost bubbly, shiny sort of sheen to his work that really set him apart. And after that, his stuff really jumped out at me. Because from that on, he didn't look like anybody else's art.
Interesting, because you know what's going to come up in my list of the Vertigo, the top 10 Vertigo, because you mentioned Chris, and he's probably number 2 or 3 on my list with his the series he worked on that I worked on as well. So yeah,
if you
we'll get there.
If you go to
eBay.
Well, actually, I was going to say, if you go to Read Comic Online, just Google it. They actually have it there where you can read it for free online. So if you're a cheap person and don't want to spend a couple of days, they have a whole bunch of stuff under there. But I'm just Googling, and they happen to Read Comic Con Online and a bunch of other things after it. So yeah, you could just check it out online.
Wow. Just please wait 5 seconds. Batman's running right now, so I'm going to check it out.
I know. Oh, is that funny?
Next on my list was a line of books from DC. If Vertigo was their best thing they did, their second best thing they did was Milestone. Milestone was kind of the brainchild of Dwayne McDuffie, Matt Wayne, and a few other people, and it was a line of superhero books, kind of aside from the DC universe, about multicultural superheroes. There were African American superheroes, there were Asian American superheroes, there were Latino superheroes. It was a grittier sort of superhero book, and to this day, there are scenes in those books that just blow me away. Zombie number 6. I'm not going to spoil anything about that book. XOMBI, number 6. Maybe one of the best comics I've ever read. Hardware, which was kind of a twist on Iron Man. Or Icon. Icon was brilliant in that it was a Superman-style alien who had landed on Earth before the Civil War. And he landed in where slaves were held. And the alien matrix that he was in, he landed as a baby, and the first people who found him, he sort of took their look. So here's this Superman-style alien who's a black man in the 1830s. Who had lived, since then. And one of the things Dwayne McDuffie said, well, of course he's a Republican. He remembers the Republicans. He remembers the forming of that party and how they were formed as an abolitionist party. That's why he's a Republican. But the other character in Icon that I love so much was Rocket, who is a teenage girl who acted, sounded, reacted like a teenage girl. The character that became the most famous was Static, which was their young teenage superhero. Every book from Icon was fantastic. Before it came out, I was on Genie, and I was, internet friends with Dwayne McDuffie, and he was talking about these books coming out, and he said, anybody who wants, we'll send photocopies to the first issues of all the books we're putting out. And raising my hand, and I got those photocopies, and I told Joe, I want all of these. I want everything they print. And the weird thing was, they didn't do well at the time, and I remember listening to comic fans going, I don't want to read a bunch of black superheroes. Yeah, I don't want to read a bunch of... And comic fans are still like that.
Yeah.
Just today, Joss Whedon announced, I'm executive producing a reboot of Buffy, and the lead character is going to be African American. And people are like, I don't want to read that. I don't want a black Buffy. Yeah. But those books are excellent, just excellent, excellent books. And I'm hoping that when they are brought back, a lot of the original creators are involved, because I follow those creators everywhere, man. John Paul Leon, Dwayne, Dennis Cowan. Just fantastic, fantastic superhero comics. Joe, what's next on your list?
Bone. And if you don't know what Bone is, you probably just were sleeping in the 90s all the way to the 2005s and beyond. Of course, it's an independent book by Jeff Smith, started in 91. Only 3,000 printed of that number one. If you got it first printing, you got something rare there. And just an amazing book. Again, one that I picked up, I don't even know where. There were so many printings of this, at least the first couple issues. I know I picked it up right before the Great Cow Race, and that pretty much cemented it. And as it went on, it started kind of as a lighthearted, semi-fantasy book, and as it went on later on, it got real serious. There were fight scenes and things that would last an entire issue quick because there were like no words. And for a while there, I think when the market was starting to teeter, Jeff brought his stuff over to Image. And for issue 21 to 27, it was published through Image. And Image republished the entire line as well. And then Cartoon Books, his company, took over with issue 28, and how many issues were there total? Was it, did it stop? No, 55 issues total. A couple ash cans, and of course, countless upon countless trades, hardcovers. I've got it in hardcover form. I've got a color slipcase hardcover. First time I guess it'd been in color. Actually, I take that back. Scholastic started publishing Bone, which is why it a way of reaching an entire new audience outside of comic shops, which is why Bone became so popular. I believe it was even published in Disney Adventure magazines for a while.
Yes, when it was edited by Heidi McDonald.
Just incredible stuff. He had I call it the Bible version because it was published like with thick leather and just wispy, thin pages. And I've had several versions of that. And every time I buy it, I just sell it for more money. And right now, I don't even know what they're going for. But it's very accessible. It's still in print. You can get it. Start from number 1. It's a book you could give to your nieces, your nephews, your sons, your daughters, kids, adults, anybody. It's just a lot of fun. And I sold boatloads of them at the shop. And like I said, I still have them to this day. Jeff's gone on to do other things, but Bone's one of those things. Like he did such a big thing with Bone that anytime he does anything else, people are like, whatever. But definitely, if you've never read it, you're in for a treat.
Stephanie?
More Vertigo for me. I'm telling you, this was literally my life the entire 90s, because I was working on it, or they were sending us these comp boxes filled with, and there was very little superhero stuff in those comp boxes. It was mostly Vertigo stuff, and more than one copy of each. So we would give these things out for Halloween. We were very popular. Anyway, Sandman.
Yeah, I hope you were giving out Preacher to the little kids when they came up for candy.
Absolutely.
No, just that death life thing. That kid, you're gonna need to.
The 8-page thing. You're gonna need this in a few years, kids. Just make sure you don't. Yeah, safe sex. But Sandman Mystery Theater. The whole film noir thing. Yeah, we were in cahoots, whatever a cahoot is. Sandman Mystery Theater specifically because it was set in the 30s, I believe. It had a lot of historical authenticity to the storylines, which I really loved. I love history. I think it ran, I don't know.
I think about 60
issues.
60
or 70 issues. There was a storyline called Dr. Death and the Night of the Butcher. It was 2 different serial killers, but it was super gory like Lobo, which I really liked in my books. I wanted to see the Warren Ellis stuff because it's Transmetropolitan, but specifically this one. The storyline, it was got grislier and grislier as the storyline went on, and people were like missing body parts and stuff. So I think Karen's husband, if I'm remembering this correctly, Karen Berger's husband is Richard Bruning. I think he worked on this. I'm not sure now.
I know it was written by Matt Wagner.
Time ago.
It was written by Matt Wagner, and Guy Davis did most of the art.
Right. So was Richard could Richard have been I don't know if he was the editor or not on these, but I remember talking with him about these back when everyone still worked up at DC Comics and, people didn't work out of their homes and stuff like that. But just the whole idea of these grisly killings, the doctor decided basically if you were unworthy of life by society's standards. And just that whole idea of who gets to decide that? Dr. Death, right? Dr. Kevorkian. The whole idea. You get to decide if, okay, I'm done here, and you want to check out, you call Dr. Kevorkian. But in this case, the doctor's like, you know what? You're just not worthy anymore. If you're I think there was an aging dance hall girl. I think there was a prize fighter. Like, he would decide that they just weren't, and trying to figure out the mystery of who was, committing these murders and why. And they were just super grisly, and I like this story. I like this particular storyline. I really have to look up how many of them there were now.
There were 70 issues, one annual.
70, okay. It was that particular storyline that I liked, that collection.
Okay. And then the Sandman Midnight Theater one-shot, where Wesley Dodds actually runs into Morpheus.
You're cutting out again. I missed Wesley Dodds.
Wesley Dodds ran into Morpheus.
Yeah. Sandman Midnight Theater, Matt Wagner, Neil Gaiman, Teddy Christensen did the art. That was a standalone one-shot. And again, not tremendously expensive on the back issue market, so you should be able to assemble a run of these, or just pick up the graphic novels that are...
Yeah, DC is reprinting them as trades currently.
Oh, that's cool.
Next on my list is a Vertigo book.
What?
Hey, weird.
He's horning in on your action.
Yes, I am.
I know.
Preacher. This was the book where Garth Ennis taught us that comics could be offensive as hell and still brilliant. Preacher was the story of Jesse Custer, who has been filled with the voice of God. And he is on the road with his girlfriend, a failed assassin named Tulip, and a vampire. And this was Garth Ennis's kind of explosion into American comics. He'd done British comics, he'd done some one-shots here and there, but this is the one that put him on the map. There is really no way to describe Preacher other than this is the most messed up Western you will ever read in your life. It is profane, it is sacrilegious, it is unbelievably violent, it is funny, it is scary. This is not a book for kids. And as it came out, every issue you would go, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe DC let them get away with that. And the good thing about it wasn't all just shock value. It was all part of the plot. I reread it start to finish about 2 years ago. And not only does it hold up, but if you read it in sequence without a break, not monthly, but okay, I'm just going to read and read and read, reading it like a novel, it reads even better. One of the best books ever, and coming in pretty high on my list. Joe?
And you can get your action figure DC Direct. Or you got to go to eBay now, but you could get them. I'm not talking the AMC TV series. I'm talking the comic book. I'm not talking
I want an action figure of Arseface.
Well, I told that story, and I'll tell you now, our good buddy Nick, who's probably up now, trying to convince God, yeah, this Preacher stuff could work. He were walking with, or I think it was, I can't think of it, Paul
Levitz.
Thank you. He was given a thing about what sort of figures do you want us to do? In the back of the room, Nick's like, Arseface. And then as we were walking with him, Nick's like, I'm not quite sure who that is. He's from Preacher. Oh, God, that's right. So, and of course, there is a Funko toy, Arseface, which you can find now. But the rest, you're on your own. I'm going to go with one of the, again, this is one of those big-ass crossovers that sold really well, was a lot of fun. It came out, and I kind of cringe a little bit, but some of it starts with Onslaught, goes to Heroes Reborn, and ends up in Heroes Return. Now, the genesis of the story is, I believe, it starts out, it was like, I don't know what, 301, 201. They find Juggernaut who got the shit beat out of him by somebody, and all he could say was one word, Onslaught. And then nothing happened with that, because we're all waiting for Onslaught to arrive. And then somehow Marvel decided, since they screwed up and didn't actually work with the Image guys, thinking, well, our characters sell, not you, the artist. And then, of course, Image came on the scene and blew them out of the water. Almost to the point where Marvel there was serious thought. People were thinking, Marvel's going to become like a number 2 pretty soon. Anyways, you can go find the story. Maybe Cory can give us an encapsulated version, but they came to Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and said, we want you to take the main Marvel characters and just rework them in your Image. Get it? And they decided to tie it into the Onslaught story, which I thought was brilliant, because now you have it as a mainstream. You just grabbed the Marvel universe. Anybody reading a Marvel comic knew what was going on, because what happened was all the non-mutant Marvel, Spider-Man, and Hulk, there was a reason for that, they all disappeared into this void that was Onslaught. And Onslaught ended up being a amalgamation of the psyche of Xavier and Magneto all the way back. I forget the name of the storyline where they sucked the adamantium out of Wolverine, and then Professor X did it on Magneto. That's what created Onslaught. Again, this is the continuity that I loved as a kid, and I still geek out now, because they're taking old events, tying them into new events. The only way to defeat us for all the heroes to go through, and everybody went in. The Fantastic Four, I think Thor dragged Iron Man or Doom in because Doom was going to go in, but he didn't, and then they took him. The Avengers went in, including the Scarlet Witch, which drove Quicksilver crazy because the mutants couldn't go in, and that's why they didn't actually go into the universe. Who am I missing? Well, Captain America was with them. They started a Heroes Reborn series with America, Fantastic Four, and what was the fourth one?
Captain America, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and Iron Man.
Iron Man. Yeah, so those were the four. Halfway through it, Rob Liefeld screwed up. They gave the storyline, I think, to Jim Lee. Rob took those stories he didn't use in Captain America and used them in Agent America. Yeah,
then he got the rights to fight an American.
And he became a fighting American. There were some herrings involved, red herrings, where Doctor Strange discovered this alternate universe. Because on the Marvel universe, everybody thought the heroes were dead. And so Spider-Man was left, Daredevil. There were two Hulks, one in the Heroes Reborn universe, one in the Marvel universe. They blame the X-Men for this, as they were wont to do. We got to blame X-Men for everything. So they were dealing with the fact that they were left, and Spider-Man especially so, because he's like, maybe I should have gone. Cable discovered that this universe, but they didn't do anything. Eventually, they brought the heroes back for whatever reason, probably sales, or maybe it was just a one-year contract, didn't do so well. They brought him back. This time, Peter David stepped up to the plate. As you know, Peter David's one of the writers that he could write the phone book and I would buy it. It's that interesting. And he brought the heroes back. Ramifications ended up in Thor because as they were leaving Doom, their play, him and Thor went at it, they disappeared. So when the heroes came back, they didn't know where Doom was, they didn't know where Thor was. And then Thor's hammer came flying down in the middle of Nevada and boom, landed. Which led to, I believe that was Straczynski's run on Thor, because he was doing Fantastic Four and he brought that up. And so again, they planned this stuff out. Things that were little happened, went on. And to me, the continuity worked out okay. Certainly better than bringing back a teenage a Stark. Hey, that's how they got rid of teenage Stark, wasn't it? He disappeared in Heroes Reborn, didn't he?
Yes. Thank God.
So, again, it all ties together just in a wonderful plan. It sold well. It was a lot of fun to read. It suffers today from, again, I've been talking, 7 minutes on just building up the continuity and trying to follow it. So if you went to read it now, yeah, they stand alone. But you kind of got to know what was going on in the background. Onslaught since reappeared. You can't let a good villain die. Just ask, anybody. They always got to bring these guys back. But was just interested in the comic line. They really wanted to know what was going on. And just a high point in the 90s that, it lasted a good 2 years. Pick them up. There's only about 400 issues there. There's an omnibus for you. Are you listening, Marvel? We can't keep giving you all this good shit.
What is it, omnibuses? Or?
We have.
Isn't there already an omnibus of Onslaught?
Omnibuy.
There might be, and then there's a cross. But they need a Heroes Reborn and a Heroes Return, and then your Omnibuy would be complete.
Omnibuses
Yeah.
Well, Stephanie, what's next on your Vertigo list? I mean your best comics list.
It is my Vertigo list. It is absolutely my Vertigo list because this is when I was reading my daughter, and I've worked on it, so this is what I read. Kid Eternity. The fact that they brought back Kid Eternity, because back in the 70s when I was reading comics, and I believe he was made to be the brother of Captain Marvel or some such thing, that wasn't even what mattered. What mattered
he hung out in that 70s, universe.
He did, right?
Yeah, he was with that universe, and he was kind of a benign character because he would call up somebody and it would just be the clean historical version of that person, I'm a history buff too, so it was an interesting story, but kind of sanitized,
Right, and it's funny that you said sanitized because the reason when it was when the 70s, the Kid Journey in the 70s, he was in the same neighborhood as Shazam, and there was a cartoon Saturday morning cartoons where you had the Shazam ISIS hour, and I wanted to be ISIS when I was a kid. So
I ran around the universe not only yelling Shazam, but making bionic noises.
Right, you had to, right, Steve Summers? So it's like, Grant Morrison, in the Kid Eternity for the 90s, something people like saying eternity and stuff, but the sanitizing part was interesting that you said, because in the 70s, he had one origin story, and then in the 90s, they revised it. And suddenly his grandfather is like a sexual predator. His grandpa, they called him. And it was a guy that was using him for his own, and I was like, wait, what? This isn't the Kid Eternity from when I was a kid, So the Kid Eternity of the 90s, I liked that they brought him back, revising the origin, making Grandpa, Donald Trump just wasn't cool. So, yeah.
So which miniseries did you like? Was it in 93 and the Sean Phillips, or were you talking the Grant Morrison three-shot?
The Grant Morrison, I would say. The Sean Phillips, the art and stuff by Sean was good, but Grant Morrison, because I'm a big Grant Morrison fan.
Oh, yeah. Again, another guy. Write the phone book. Take my money. I don't care what you...
Right, Grant, and like Grant and the Invisibles, it's like, oh my God, that Grant Morrison is like, he's my guy. And the Invisibles isn't on my top 10, by the way, which is really weird.
Next on my list was Mark Waid's run on The Flash. Get it? Run. Mark Waid was a one-man crusade against doom and gloom and grim and gritty. He basically made Wally West into everybody's favorite hero in the 70s. Not in the 70s, in the 90s. It was, there were cliffhangers, it was very comic booky, but it was well written. You really cared about the Flash. You cared about his supporting characters. He made the villains interesting, and he really built up the DC universe after Crisis, kind of filling in and bringing stuff back and adding characters like Max Mercury and Impulse and XS and creating the Speed Force and creating the whole idea around the Flash, making the Flash one of the most important characters in the DC universe, whereas before he was just kind of, oh yeah, he runs fast. They're still enjoyable, they're still well done, and I would say that pretty much after Mark Waid left, the series sort of coasted on what he had done until the New 52 when they brought back Barry Allen. And they thought, oh, Barry Allen's back. Everybody will be... No, people were like, well, we miss Wally West. We want Wally West back. And I think they have yet to recapture that love that people had for the Wally West Flash. Joe, what's
now
next?
It's time to ask the Strode.
Okay, for a shiny new dime.
Cory, what is the one comic book imprint that I am trying to get every single issue of?
Malibu.
More specific.
Ultraverse.
Very good. The Ultraverse. I love me my Ultraverse. Did not sell worth shit at the comic stores. I mean, there was some interest in it, but the problem was, okay, first month, 4 issues. Next month, 4 new issues. Now you got 8, and then 4 more, and so on. So just too many issues, too fast. I could not get people when they broke down and did a couple crossovers. They did Godwill, which they brought Thor over. Eventually, they threw they kind of collapsed the whole line, brought it back up. They threw Adam Warlock over there, where the 7th Soul Gem was the actual personality and soul of the Soul Gems that we knew in the Marvel Universe. And they got together and they had to break them up and whatever. There were tons of books, tons of titles. I enjoyed it all. And again, the ones we bitch about, they had a Avengers Ultra Force Avengers crossover where it ended and we're distrustful of each other. But it's never going to probably be published ever again. Nobody really knows why. We've theorized, and we've had some people talk about, because they were creator-owned books that they'd have to cough up royalties, which again, under Disney's thing, isn't that big a deal. There are things where I think VP President of Publishing Tom Brevoort,
yes,
he said that he has a contractual position as an ongoing producer deal for all Malibu type properties. Whether or not that's true or not, because remember, Marvel went bankrupt after buying Malibu. So the question is which, if they go bankrupt, do any of these things still exist? I mean, and again, we'd have to talk to if we see
Len Straczewski.
Yeah, when he comes to town again, I'll ask him. I said, "Do you still own a piece of Prime because of the bankruptcy?" And of course, Prime is being one that will never, ever be published because of one of the creators, Gerald Jones, pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts of possession and distribution of child pornography. And I really, really can't see Disney, let's publish Prime with a child pornographer as one of the creators, even though he probably won't be involved with it. Yeah, that ain't happening. So just another death knell. But I've tried to pick up all the issues because my goal is to read it all and just see how it works. The last issue of it is Ultraverse Unlimited, where that's pretty much the end of the Ultraverse. To make you feel better, nobody ever found the God Wheel again, which was created by Larry Niven, by the way. Made it back. Who else made it back? Oh, Adam Warlock. He came back. And in fact, I don't think he remembers being over there. I don't even know if they referred to it. If he just, I had the weirdest dream. So,
Phoenix was over there.
Oh yeah, I forgot the Phoenix Resurrection, and there were crossovers: Rune Silver Surfer, Rune Venom, Prime Captain America, Ultraforce Spider-Man, Conan versus Rune, which again was one of those we think that'd never be published, but Conan's back in the universe. And the question is, if Rune is owned by Barry Windsor Smith, that would be a great villain to just bring back. Oh, how could I forget? Juggernaut was over there. He was in the All New Exiles. It was a fun time at the time. Our good buddy Al Payne was part of the Malibu, so he not only gave me like a gigantic window-sized poster of the Ultraverse. I think Butch actually ended up gave me stuff to give away. We worked our hardest to really get this excitement going, but eventually it just kind of folded in upon itself. Marvel canceled the whole line. They brought them back at $1.50, but they also brought it back under a brand new continuity. They had some weird Spider Prime running around. I don't know. Did that ever show up in the Spideyverse at all? Probably.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I thought you remember everything. Did you read Nightman versus Wolverine? Prime versus Hulk? I think I'm done here.
Stephanie?
Shade the Changing Man. You knew that was to come up, right?
Yep.
It's funny because I did not know that Shade existed in the 70s. This wasn't something that was in my universe back in the 70s, and Steve Ditko. I had to go back and find those. Find out, what was it the same book? Because the storyline was so shocking to me at the time in the 90s, Troy Grenzer and the serial killer, and the love triangle stuff between, was it Lenny and Kathy and Shade? I didn't get it. It was so freaky to me. It was like nothing I'd ever read before. I was like, wait, what is the Ditko one about? Is it the same thing? Is it the same character? Where did he come from? What's the origin here?
It's connected to Ditko, but boy, the storytelling styles are unbelievably different.
Oh, yeah. I had to go back and find out, right? I was like, I don't know what's going on here. This planet made it, all of this, just trying to get into the head of whoever's writing this, right? Who is this, who's writing this storyline? Where is it going? Where did it come from? And, the screamer, everything. Troy Grenzer, Troy killing Cat. I don't know if you remember the scene, the splash page, literally splash when Troy Grenzer kills Kathy's parents. And again, that Lobo type of gore. And I'm like, what am I reading? Right? And was this a thing in the 70s? This could never have gotten past anybody. Right? It's like, no, that can't be what this is. But I really loved working on the book. I loved the people who worked on the book. I loved Chris's work on it. So the storylines, everything, the relationship again between Shade and Kathy and Lenny, and so much of it was new for me. And the fact that he got brought back each time in a different form, this was brand new to me. Shade, the character, again, I didn't know anything about him. So it opened my eyes to a lot of different characters. The fact that he was this red-haired emotion, this. Hey, red hair, wait a second. Hi.
So how did
Was there
Shade?
a pie in Shade the Changing Man? Sorry.
How did Shade the Changing Girl tie into it? Or was that something new from the 2000s?
That's the new series from Gerard Way in the
Oh,
Young
okay.
Animals.
Oh, I haven't read those at all.
Wait, it's the same.
Ah,
What's that? Cecil Castellucci against Castellucci? Is that the name?
I was only reading them in the 90s, so anything after
No,
that.
it's. Oh yeah, because Peter Milligan wrote it. Then,
Peter Milligan was. Pete was writing
he
it.
wrote the
Chris was
90s.
doing.
Okay.
And I think that might have also been the first time I worked on a book that a woman was working on too. Because one of the first things I learned, I mean, as a little girl in New York City, I'm 5 years old going to Comic-Con, I was one of the only girls there. Girls didn't read comics, they didn't work in comics. So I think this might have been the first time, outside of an editor, I did have a female editor, Robbie, over at Archie, but I think it was the first time I worked with someone else who was actually an artist, and that would have been Colleen Doran. So,
oh, cool.
So
We
that
actually
was
had
big
her
for me,
as
too.
for an appearance in our comic shop.
Oh, really? That's cool.
So that was kind of fun. Yeah,
That is good.
if you go peek on my Facebook page, I actually have some pictures, Polaroids of that particular one under the
Okay.
album, Hot Comics Crazy. So it was kind of fun. She was very very cool guest, and I do follow her on the Facebooks because I'm dying for her to get the A Distant Soil stuff done because I really want to. That's another series never read, but I definitely want to read it when it comes out. Of course, now I want to find Shade the Changing Man.
She sat around with us and watched The Simpsons after people quit getting signings. We just watched Simpsons all day. She was also at the after party at the convention, told stories of the sexism and other horrible things in the comic industry that I knew nothing about.
Yes, she actually experienced that where I did not, ever. I mean, ever. No one ever treated me like I was something. How do I explain that? It was, you worked with these people. And it was weird because when Dan Vazzo and I, when we broke up, there were people, sure, in the industry, editors, artists, were like, oh, I hear you and Dan split up. Want to go get a cup of coffee? I mean, yeah, okay, whatever. But while I was working in the industry, I didn't experience what she did. So it was seeing that through someone else's eyes and going, oh, my God, I can't believe it happened to you. I'm so sorry. It was just, there weren't a lot of women in comics. It just wasn't the thing. Like I said, you didn't read them, you didn't work in comics, so Colleen's really cool. I love her work. I love her as a person. She had she had like a situation happen where she almost blinded herself. What year did that happen? Do you know about this? She put the eye drops in her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty scary. So, but yeah, Shade the Changing Man is definitely on my list.
Next on my list is probably the most mainstream of all the comics I have listed.
Uh-oh.
Kurt Busiek and George Perez's run on the Avengers. This was toward the end of the 90s. It was after the Onslaught thing and after Heroes Renewed and Reborn and Retreaded and Rebooted. And they wanted to make a big splash, so when the Fantastic Four came back, Chris Claremont wrote it. When the Avengers came back, it was Kurt Busiek and George Perez, and they put together probably the greatest Avengers run since the Kirby. It was exciting. Kirby had a certain style, but when I thought Avengers, my first Avengers artist was George Perez, starting with 141. George Perez back on the Avengers. And there are a lot of people who say, oh, when an artist comes back after a classic run, there's no way it can be as good. Perez was better. He was a better artist. He was better at storytelling. He had better inkers with Alvey, and Kurt Busiek knows the Marvel Universe better than anybody on the planet. This was fun. It was well written. It was exciting. It was filled with classic superhero moments. It wasn't ashamed of being a superhero comic. It didn't try to cover up the fact that it's heroes versus villains.
And it had D-Man!
And I absolutely adore this run. I adore this run. That when it ended, I was heartbroken because this was one of those creative teams I just wanted to do the book forever. I just wanted them to do the book. I should die before they break up that creative team so that I don't have to see the end of it. But nope, it ended. It's been collected in trades. It's been collected in omnibuses. And it's still one of the best runs of any superhero book. Joe?
I'll second that. It's one of the few that I actually have as I have two variants. After the run, I kind of just skip it. And then, of course, you get into Avengers Disassembled, and then we get the fun that Bendis brought to it. So, yeah, I will definitely give you a strong one on that one. I'm going to visit one that we visited earlier, the Death of Superman and Return, because that, too, was also one that we just absolutely loved. It sold like hotcakes, and listeners of this show have heard this story, but I'll repeat it for our guests. Hot Comics St. Paul, Pat and I we bought the shop, The Death of Superman. That week was the first week, and it was probably ever own a shop. I remember thanking Dan Jurgens for it because I said, you allowed us to do things like buy a phone, buy a credit machine. Kudos to Dan Wiesemeyer because he ordered a second of Black Books from Diamond Cap City town because they had a warehouse right over where the awards building was, where the soccer stadium is being built right now. And so we would pick up the books locally. We got the books. Dan and Brian were going to go over, open up the shop, Hot Comics Edina. So everybody was on board that day. And I mean, I would love to time travel and just visit the shop because essentially you came into the shop. This is like an 800 square foot shop. Take a right, go over. There was the display plaque with the bloody S and all the fun stuff inside it. And then the newsstand. You could buy one of each. We did not limit anybody except like some of the people I would use Cory. Like if Cory wanted 5 copies, we'd be like, Cory, we will get your copies when we get our reorders on Tuesday. You know, people we knew that were cool with it. So you walk in, pick up the copy, walk the square around the back issues, check out the new issues, get in line. Brian was there. He was running cash register. We had a line going nonstop. I was busy pulling customers' books, trying to get the pull order. There was a news crew in there interviewing Dan Wiesemeyer. Just a day that flew. If there was only one bad spot on the entire day, and we didn't know about it until I did the Solo Joe with Pat. And Cory, do you remember what that was?
I do not.
Pat, no, got no cake. There was like a big Death of Superman cape. I had a pillar. No, actually, Nick Post's mom, who was a chiropractor, borrowed us her $1,000 skeleton, and we put a Superman outfit that we rented from one of the rented places. So here was this Superman skeleton. It was a fantastic time because it was a slow news week. Everybody and their uncle wanted a piece of this comic. We had them, and then of course everybody sold out. They were going for $80 on the West Coast by that Thursday, and then the following week we batch from Diamond, and we were the only shop that had them. And so kudos for Dan on that. I remember Dan took about 50 to Edina. They opened, that was their teaser. They put these comics in the window so people coming by would see this, realizing there's a comic shop opening up here in a month. The build up to the Death of Superman, you know, where Doomsday just came out of nowhere, sold fast. The events afterwards were crazy. We made sure everybody got the Justice League. I think it was just JLA, Justice League of America or JLA. There was a crossover there. Out of, I think, 350 subscribers, we had about 150 that were there that was 150 people wanted the Superman. So we made sure that I would say maybe 70 to 100 were just there just for the Superman thing. They stayed with us till the end. A few stayed on for the Return of Superman. I think out of all those subscribers, one stayed, and he just said, well, I just did it because you guys were so cool collecting it. I think there was a Green Lantern tie-in. Just a phenomenal run. People were excited. I didn't mention it, but at the same time, you had Batman got his back broken. which wasn't as near as compelling storyline, but people were interested in that. And then, of course, the rise of Image, the continual rise of Valiant. I mean, it was just a confluence of influences that just made it an awesome time to own a comic shop. And of course, we were in it, and we rode that wave for years. I know that it was April when Superman came back and warned an advisory, because they said there are more comic books ordered in this month than have been ordered during the death of Superman, and we want to advise retailers not to go too crazy on this. Well, we were fine, and we did all the way really well until by the end of the summer, when we started to realize, Image was shipping books late, and that other one that I won't re-mention because I don't have any ginger ale on me. So it was a fun time. For me, when that Death of Superman issue came out, I just took it. I went in the back room. I opened it up and read it. It was pretty intense when it came out. But he got better.
Stephanie?
Doom Patrol.
Yes.
Oh.
Grant Morrison,
Excellent.
again, because it's Grant. Like, Grant could write a shopping list for groceries, and I'd read it. Like Joe was saying earlier about Grant Morrison I think he's absolutely brilliant. But that having been said, my favorite issues of Doom Patrol were the ones that Rachel Pollack worked on. And she just dealt with issues, again, that I'd never read about in comics. And I think it's because Vertigo, DC bringing this, mature themes to comic books. Transgender issues. Rachel Pollack is transgender. Bisexuality. She actually threw some religion in to some of these issues that she was writing. Judaism, things about the Kabbalah, people probably had never read before. If they, people don't understand a lot of things about religions that they're not familiar with, and she put some of that stuff in there. And I come from mixed backgrounds, so I just found that super interesting that she would put those themes in there as well. The creation of Crazy Jane in those issues, those particular issues, with the 64 personalities. My favorite of those personalities being the busy Lizzie Borden, because it might not even been one of the real personalities. And I know she had 64, and I'm going to actually walk around here. Give me a second. I hope I don't lose you. I need to look outside a second. Each personality, there were just so many different things going on there. I'm trying to remember some of them. She got
Brotherhood of Dada
or something. Like one of them, she would explode, right? If she got aroused or something. I remember she would literally explode. I remember that. But I've been to the Lizzie Borden house in Fall River, Massachusetts, and that's another one of those stories that makes me go, wait, what? She did what? She took an axe and all this. And but that particular personality might not have even been a real one of all of those personalities she had. So there was just so much going on in that book. I came out to see if the black bear's out here. I'm hearing noises. We have a bear in our yard. Did I tell you guys that?
No.
So yes, there's a bear in our yard. So I'm looking around because I hear a twig snapping, and I'm just outside checking to see if it's the bear or not. I'll go back inside now.
Why would you go outside if there's a bear?
To see if it's there.
We have a bear attack on the podcast. That would be a first.
Exactly. I bet you've never had that before.
Bad bear. Don't eat our guests.
I hear twigs snapping. I'm like, let me go look.
Oh, let's see. It might be an animal that wants to kill me. I'll go look.
He just came behind me. He's like, what are you doing? He was like, I think
there is a movie I want you to watch. There is now a movie I want you to watch. It's a documentary by Werner Herzog called Grizzly Man. And it's about a man who lived with the grizzly bears. And it does not end well for him. Stay away from bears.
And it's funny because when we heard, okay, let me back up. You don't have to have this on the podcast. You can actually edit this out if you need to. But Dave's the youngest of 7 children, and his brother, the oldest of the 7, Paul, came to visit a couple of weeks ago. And he came to visit, and he was here for a while, and then he took off and went to go get some gas. And he drove through a lot of dirt roads here. And when he got out of his car, he saw what looked like bear prints, paw prints on the back of his car. And he called and he said, Mom, is there a bear in your neighborhood? I just came from there. Mom's like, no. He's like, are you sure I got paw prints in the back of my car? Like, no, there's no bear. So about 2 days later, one of our neighbors has a farm just down the road, and they have video cameras. They turn on at night with the lights if something should go by, and it captured this black bear. And Dave is like, it's 2 years old. You know, they're saying it's a 2-year-old bear. Now, I hear 2-year-old and thinking toddler. I'm like, oh, it's a little thing I can put on my lap. And he's like, no, it's an adult. It's a 2-year-old bear. They're not babies anymore. Don't go near it if you see it. I'm like, oh, it's a baby.
It is not Gentle Ben.
Exactly. And Dave, it's funny, before Paul arrived, it was a couple of days before Paul arrived, Dave was outside. He had a bonfire sitting out, you know, I don't know if he was making s'mores, playing his guitar, but he's out in the woods, and he heard twigs breaking. And he's like, is someone there walking in the woods? And no one answered him. And he now knows it was probably the bear. So I've yet to see the bear, but we've got a picture of it, and we've heard it. So I won't go out again to look for it. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, a picture of it's good enough for me.
But yes,
Now, I gotta ask, were you part, or did you buy the Doom Force special?
The Doom Force special?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look at
The issue that they parodied Rob Liefeld.
Yeah. It was Grant Morrison wrote it. And it just had a ton of people. Because I remember DC came out with this Doom Force special under the idea that, okay, we're gonna revamp the Doom Patrol, because, you know, the first version came out, I think it was Paul Kupperberg. He took over Doom Patrol, and it kind of sold okay, and then it kind of died. And then, of course, with the first issue that Grant Morrison did, which is what issue number, Corey?
19.
Very good. And he lasted until when
64.
When Rachel Pollack took over. But anyways, they came out with this Doom Force special saying, the Doom Force isn't selling as well. Grant has agreed to redo it, and we're coming out with this special to see. People lost their shit because they thought, I mean, you're not kidding. I mean, they thought DC was giving them the truth. That this is what it was going to go for, you know.
I remember this.
Yeah.
Judgment Day. I remember the cover. We did this. Danny and I colored this one.
Yeah,
yes.
Just crazy. I mean, it just...
Because Tom was our editor. John Workman, of course, was doing lettering. I remember this now from the cover. I'm like, yeah. It's like, which one of these heroes will die?
Yes!
Yeah. Oh, my God. And, you know, again, in the internet age, it would probably spread and it would die. But back then, you know, you hear these rumors, and they just kept a life of their own. And then finally, at that fall's retailer convention, and said it probably Cap, I think, because it came out in '91. They just said it's a joke, people. It's a one shot. There's not going to be any more.
Now, did Richard Case work on this? Because I'm trying to think of what else.
Yes, he
did. We worked with Richard on Doom Patrol, and
he started like about issue 4.
Sandman. Right, but I think he worked on Sandman with us as well, or Sandman. I'm pretty sure he worked on Sandman storyline. I'm trying to think of what it was now.
I'll take a look on Sandman here, see what
I don't remember him on Sandman.
Really? Am I having a false memory here? Okay.
No. To this day, this is one of the series that my daughter, who is a Grant Morrison aficionado, has yet to read, because I'm trying to score the omnibus, and I think I have her the original issues downstairs, but I didn't have the whole run, so I think I got rid of them in the great comic purge of last year. So, yeah, definitely one to seek out, because it was just fun. That story of
Richard
Dada.
did work on a. Okay, because I think Richard worked on the Sandman that Mark Hempel worked on, and I'm pretty sure that Mark Hempel worked on some of the Eternity stuff. That's what I'm trying to put together in my brain. I'm like,
Yeah.
Let's go to the Strotron 2000.
Wait, who am I looking for?
Richard Case.
Yeah, issue 68. It says issue number 68. Yeah, he's not credited with any others, not to mean that he didn't, but so he is definitely in that one.
He did one issue of Books of Magic. Let's see, Doom Patrol. Preacher Special. He did a Preacher Special. Did a bunch of Shade the Changing Man.
Okay, because I remember meeting Richard only once, and that was at San Diego Comic-Con in 1994. And that's pretty much, we just talked about, I believe, that it wasn't just the Doom Patrol stuff. it was Sandman. So I was thinking, wait, am I having a false memory here, Richard? Because you meet so many people, and the thing was, back then, you worked with people you never met. Like, you lived in New York City, but these people, like all these people they brought over from the UK for the Vertigo stuff, it's like they still lived over there. Or they brought them here, but they didn't particularly live in New York City, so you'd, meet them at a convention 5 years after you started working with them. It was like, oh, that's what you look like, so it was kind of weird. But I only ever met Richard.
He also did 2-story arcs in Sandman Mystery Theater.
Really?
Yep. 46 to 48 and 57 to 60.
I'm going to have to go look at those again. Interesting.
Oh, and here you go.
Is he doing anything now?
Let's see. What's he up to now? He works extensively in computer games.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
He also did the Gen 13 Bikini Pinup Special.
The what?
The Gen 13 Bikini Pinup Special. So there's that.
I was one of J. Scott Campbell's.
Jim Lee.
J. Scott
Jim
Campbell,
Lee, right?
No, Gen 13 was J. Scott Campbell, but they did
under Image.
They did a bunch of specials, and one of which was that where he did a pinup.
Okay, because I thought when I met Jim Lee for the first time at San Diego Comic-Con at the Image booth, I thought it was Gen 13 with the posters behind us. I know the Max was there. All that the Max stuff was there.
It was under his studio line. It was under his studio line, which means it's now owned by DC.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, not that they've done anything with it, but it's
money
on the table.
Next on my list, boy, we're going on 2 hours here. Thank goodness we only have 2 left. My number 2, The Invisibles. This is a comic that changed my life. I don't say that lightly. This is Grant Morrison's masterpiece in many ways. This is him telling a story of every conspiracy you've ever heard of is true. This is this comic series is a sigil. It is a spell. It is about time travel. It's about alternate universes. It's about the end of binary sexuality. It's about Grant Morrison wanting to be the coolest superhero in the world. It spawned a website called Barbalith, which was a discussion website where I met people who still to this day I've never met in person, but are my closest friends. I learned more about the universe from that website. I learned more about myself on that website. And it all comes from this comic book. This is the comic I had no idea that Stephanie worked on. The minute she told me, I grabbed my trade paperbacks and shoved them in a bag so that the next convention I saw her at, I could get her to sign them. This is, I read this at least once a year. And I understand people who say, I don't understand it, because it is a different style of storytelling. It is non-linear storytelling. It is an amazing experiment. If you've read the Illuminati novels, it makes a lot more sense because it follows that same flow and idea. But just unbelievably beautiful work by everybody involved. And I cannot praise this comic enough. It is my second favorite comic of the 90s. Joe?
I am going to dredge up ones we repeated. I'll just mention them quick. Kingdom Come / Marvels. I kind of view them together because there was Alex Ross's love note to the comic world, because we basically took us by the throat and just made it so that you could almost believe. You would look up and see Giant Man straddling the building, or there would be Superman whisking by in a yellow, blue, red blur. Marvels came out again. I don't remember if these came out while I had the shop or after, before, but it was just fantastic. There were graphic designs, books, signed limited books. I swear, if every year they come out with a bigger, better version, I'd buy it. And I think I finally settled Kingdom Come. I have in the absolute format, because it's not only that, but it has the what do you call it? Where he lists every single detail and every single thing. Addendum?
Yes.
And I have a hardcover too. That's the normal graphic novel side, which I read. I don't know. Whenever I feel like it, I just pull it out and read it. They didn't ever do a sequel with Kingdom Come, but they did bring the characters back. I believe when Jeff Jones was doing Justice Society of America in the 2000s. So that would probably be the closest you're going to get to a sequel, and we actually get to meet Gog. Marvels, I don't believe I actually have a Marvels in my collection, and I'm going to have to. I know they're coming out with a new printing of it. I've had signed copies. I've had big copies. Again, with books like this, and Sandman, and Invisibles, and Bone, and Cerebus, I've pretty much replaced and just made them with my graphic novels, because these are books I'm going to pull off the shelves along with the 80s books, Watchmen, Dark Knight, read them. That's not going to fall apart, which a comic book is wont to do. And, again, if these are books you've never read, definitely Marvels you could pick out. Kingdom Come's a little tougher if you just go off the fact that the heroes have retired. You'll find out why. You don't have to worry about the ones you're seeing splattered across the landscape, because eventually you'll discover them. And of course, any comic that has the Monkey Men in it, has. So definitely for those two with Alex Ross, definitely a must buy on my list. Steph, did she go out to look at the bear again?
No.
Did we lose?
Oh, okay.
I'm here. You're screaming.
I didn't hear any twigs snapping. I didn't.
Are you asking me about my number one now, or?
Yeah, I think we're up to number one.
Yeah, I think we are, because Sandman we just kind of did as a group.
Okay. This is just going to be too obvious being a Vertigo book, but Sandman, of course. Neil Gaiman's Sandman changed my life working on this book, working with the people who worked on this book. I'm trying to think of a favorite storyline out of all of the different, and they did all the trades and then releasing the new editions. It's just, I don't think that I could pick working on A Game of You, working on number 33, that was the first one I worked on with Barbie, like I said earlier, and Wanda, and just it being set in New York City. It was fun for me because it was the first big title I was working on by myself. So that obviously, I have good memories from that. Working with Kelly Jones, this is like my favorite Batman artist ever. Sandman, pretty much what you were saying earlier, Joe, about, book that changed your life. This book changed my life. Everything about it, the story, and I think it has a lot to do with Neil bringing up a lot of, there's Shakespeare, there's mythology, there's so much of Neil in the books, so much of what he's interested in, and Neil the person, and I'm not sure how much I should say here. We're on a podcast about Neil, but
he tied into the DC as well. I've railed on where I thought Vertigo made a mistake when they decided to build a wall between the DC universe and the Vertigo universe. I mean, obviously some things, I think Preacher was the first one that came out where everybody's like, oh, this doesn't tie into any DC stuff for Vertigo. It's just its own universe. But we know Sandman had, especially because the early issues, like Cory said, it tied into the original Sandman, Jack Kirby's Sandman. We saw Martian Manhunter. Even was it The Wake, where you look in the back and pretty much everybody who was in the books there, and you look at different characters. I mean, there's Darkseid sitting there. You have that wonderful column.
Wesley Dodds is in that one.
Yep.
Yes.
Wesley Dodds, yes.
You've got Batman, Superman, and Martian Manhunter, and they're going, do you ever have that reoccurring dream where you're in a TV show over and over, and Batman doesn't everybody? And John's like, I don't. just fun little things like that. I could not wait until my daughters were old enough to read this, and they are, and I have no idea if they are reading it. I mean, they're Holly's starting college. Dana, she may have a copy somewhere because I always want to talk to her about it. She said, I haven't read it yet. But on the other hand, she has my whole Invisibles collection, and she's read that multiple times. So, and, Holly's got my Sin City. Well, I don't think they call it an omnibus, but it's a damn big Sin City. So just a fun book. And it was one that I felt reached over to not just comic fans, but non-comic fans. I ordered a boatload of issues 50. That was the P. Kray Russell. I can't think of the title. But
The Fables.
It was just a standalone.
It's a Sandman special, but P. Craig Russell was doing, you mean?
No, it was issue 50 of Sandman, and it was a standalone.
Oh.
And I think it dealt with, was it the one where the guy wanted his city saved, and he made a deal with, he didn't realize Morpheus, and he saved it. And it was just a wonderful issue, or maybe that was later on. But anyways, I bought a boatload of these, and whenever you could always tell the dutiful girlfriend or wonderful wife who came into the comic store and just kind of looked around bored while her husband or boyfriend just dug into all the back issues. And of course, we had a nice couch in that they could just sit down and watch. But I always made sure to give them a copy of issue 50. And I said, I almost guarantee you are going to absolutely love this. And if you do, make him buy the other ones for you. So
yeah. And it's funny you mentioned number 50 because earlier, Cory, I don't remember when we were talking, but the whole possible 90's gossip or whatever was going on in comics, issue 50 of Sandman and issue 75, P. Craig worked on, because P. Craig Russell and Neil are very good friends. And Danny was just the colorist. It's like just the letterer. There was no huge relationship there, not between Todd. Todd is loved, but it was just, you happened to work on this book. But Neil knew it was a big deal. He knew that 50 was a big deal. He thought, okay, we're probably not going to go much longer. And then suddenly, we're at 75. And he said, that's a big deal too. So he specifically requested that P. Craig Russell work on those and not Danny. It caused a huge problem for Danny, not for me. So.
Well, and P. Craig Russell colors his own work.
Right. But we couldn't explain that back in the day because Danny just thought he was being, snubbed or something. And I'm like, that's not what's going on here. And there was a whole bunch of other situations there as well. But specifically, P. Craig worked on 50 and 75 because they obviously they're big deals, to reach those numbers, to get that kind of a run on a comic when, Karen's bringing over these people from the UK, like Joe said, making the Vertigo line, creating this thing, and bringing over all these people from Scotland, Ireland, and England. Who are these people? No one knows who they are, Neil was working for Playboy magazine. He'd written the autobiography for Duran Duran. Who is this guy, And, Sandman turned out to be one of the biggest titles for them, as we know now. But at the time, it was super interesting to be involved in this back in the 90's for sure. So,
and it's coming back. They had they're doing the Sandman universe in the Vertigo line, which we thought was going away. There's a one-shot, it's either out or coming out, where they're introducing 4 separate pieces of the Sandman universe, and Neil's on board with it. I think he's writing the what do you call it? It's not a bookend, but like the introduction issue. And then there's one dealing in the library. There's the other one that came out. Another house has appeared in the Dreaming. We know House of Mystery, House of Secrets. Well, this is another house, and there's 2 more coming out, and this will take care. So the properties are still loved, and they still got some juice on them. We talk about the story where Cory, what was the issue where Neil came up and said, "Yeah, this is like a anniversary of Sandman. I have a series ready for you," and DC said no, and we're like, "You are effing kidding me." And eventually the new people involved came in and said, yes, we're going to do it. And I'm trying to think of what the story was.
I think it was one of the graphic novels that they did. One of the one-shot graphic novels.
Really?
And I got to admit, I didn't read Sandman Mystery Theater. I didn't read Book of Dreams. So I still got lots of stuff to read, and it's coming back too. So Daniel had a big part of the Batman metal crossover thing. So they're actually metal, Batman, metal,
That's
and
cool.
that had me. Yeah, it had me in the last issue where Daniel showed up. You know, in one of the last pages, those comic book moments where you. Okay, I'm buying this, and I was like, I'm not buying this crossover. So they're gonna milk those properties. I'm waiting for Watchmen babies any day now.
That's funny. I got the chance to go to one of the Book Expo America. They basically closed down Fifth Avenue in New York City because that's where all the publishers are, or at least they were before DC moved to Beverly Hills or wherever they are now. And so the publishers would come down into the street. It was like a street fair for books. And the Jacob Javits Center was involved, and you would go in there. And basically, if you were involved in publishing, you brought not a briefcase, but a rolling piece of luggage. And you would just go, it was like shopping. But you could just go up to any publisher and be like, this looks interesting, and put it in your suitcase. And you'd leave there with all of these books, all these brand new books. Getting involved in Sandman actually brought me to my first Book Expo America, and I got a chance to meet Art Spiegelman because of that, of Mouse fame. And just the number of people that I met through working on this book, through getting involved with Neil, it's really Terry Pratchett. I mean, people that I never in a million years thought I would meet or get to know. And Sandman is that book for me. So obviously my number one's in the 90s.
When we're done, I'll tell you my Mouse story.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I hope it's a good
one. And now, the last book.
Oh, that's it? No more? We can the podcast.
One more.
This final episode.
I got
Cory's
mine.
covering the last book. Oh, yours. Never mind. It's all excited. My Monday nights are free.
I know what you're going to say.
Nope.
Many of you won't be coming back today. Actually, most of you will be killed or wounded in the next 5 minutes. I wish I could tell you that today's battle will help turn the tide of war, but I can't. Mostly we're just fodder to convince the Huns that we're still interested in this sector. Normally, we'd request they send in the Belgians or the French to get shot up instead of us, but they care even less about this sector than we do. I tried wiring the HQ the other day to see if they could send a few platoons of Canadians or Australians or some of the other expendable colony troops, but they finished wiping them out in the Somme last week. It'll be a while before they send more in, so this one's up to us. There's no way we're ever going to take all of these machine gun nests, but we're going to try because those are our orders, damn it. Just remember, try to take at least one German with you. We're hopelessly outnumbered, but if we kill a few of them, at least it'll piss them off. All right, now let's go get those bloody sausage eaters.
Wait,
this is a sequence.
Was that Zap Brannigan?
No, this is a sequence from the greatest comic ever printed. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. Long Shot Comics, The Long and Unlearned Life of Roland Geathers, which is back in print. This was a very odd comic when it came out because it's, like 60 panels to a page, and all of the characters are just dots. It's from so far back, the characters are just dots. It's basically a novel told in comic form, just dialogue. And it's brilliant. There are two more that, one of which has never been printed, that are on their way to my house right now. But it's Long Shot Comics by, let me get the name here, by Shane Simmons. And it was originally published by Slave Labor. It has since been put out by Eye Strain Publications. And it is the story of a rather unlucky gentleman who was born in England in the late 18th century, and it follows him through World War I and World War II and his untimely and miserable death. It's one of the funniest things I've read. When you pick it up, you'll look at it, and you'll just be amazed at how it looks. Joe, you remember this book. We talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot recommend this book enough. I like it more than The Invisibles. This isn't going to change your life, but you're going to read it and go, it will expand what you can think comics can be. It will expand your sense of humor. It's unbelievably intelligent because historical jokes based on what was going on at the time, done by little dots. And that,
every panel, just make a square, put a dot in it. That's it. Maybe two dots, depending on who's there.
Or if there's a crowd scene, a bunch of dots.
Yeah.
Or if it's characters who were shot up and lost limbs in the war, a big dot and a little dot right next to it, which is his limb, which came off.
You're going to kick yourself for not thinking of this yourself.
I know.
You're going to be like, I could have done this.
You know who else is pretty brilliant when it comes to things, Joe?
Who's that?
These guys, our sponsors. That's right, here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network, we have ads, and our first sponsor is me. That's right, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. I have my first book out with Dangerous Dan Moore. It's the first 100 strips of our online web strip, Worldwide News, the story of the lowest rated cable news network. And you can get yourself a copy with commentary, with all sorts of extras, with signatures and everything. Just email Dan over at lordshadowflame@gmail.com. Our top sponsor, who's been with us since day one, is DreamHost. DreamHost.com. You need yourself a website, and DreamHost.com is the #1 web host in the whole known universe. Just head over to DreamHost.com, put in the code KRAYZ, K-R-A-Y-Z, get $20 off your first year. How can you beat that? Our other sponsor is Graze, GRAZE.com. Healthy snacks for a healthy lifestyle. Just head over to Graze, put in the code CORYS 3R5P. Your first and fifth box are free. You could get them weekly. You could get them bi-weekly. You could get them monthly. You just order a whole bunch of them. It's great stuff to keep you away from the vending machine at work. Now, if you would like to leave a comment for any of the podcasts that we do, we'd love those. Go ahead and email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, or you can call 952-856-0519. Operators are standing by. Okay, it's just a place that will record your calls, but we'll play them on the air. We'll answer your questions. We love getting feedback. Tell us what you think. Ask a question. Suggest a topic. Be a guest. Send us your stuff. SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. If you would like to advertise on any of the Solitaire Rose radio shows, you can. Just email us at SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. Subject advertising. Thanks.
See how he gets that in there. You never see it coming.
We've only got 15 minutes.
You never see it coming.
So rather than me going on and on and on and on about the other podcasts we do, Stephanie, you do a podcast on this website now, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Why don't you inform...
Thanks for inviting us. Good night, everybody.
With my husband, when we're traveling, my husband's a musician, Dave Kofel, he decided that if we're going to be on the road, when he performs, he can perform afternoon shows, he can perform evening shows, sometimes more than one show in a day, sometimes 5 shows over 3 days. He thought, let's travel with, obviously we have music and we have books, and, you need to wind down after a show or just do something where you're doing something other than music. So he said, well, we both enjoy playing Scrabble. Let's find, a travel Scrabble game, take on the road with us. And we would play Scrabble every night. We were camping. In our tent, we would do this, or we would go somewhere for dinner, and we'd bring in this little travel Scrabble game. We'd play in the restaurant before our meal would come or something like that. And he ended up calling this podcast Scrabbling Across the West, because at the time we would travel across the Pacific Northwest every May through June. So about a month on the road or so, May or June, I should say. And I think the first time we did this, he played 38 shows in 23 days or something. It was insane. We didn't make time to relax or to visit all these beautiful places. We're passing signs that say Yellowstone this way, So the first year we didn't do that, but the second year we made time to do that. And so now on the podcast, we not only play a game of Scrabble, and he takes a picture now of the board to show the words that we put down and which one of us won that evening. But we also talk about all the places we've seen, visited, lots of beautiful, beautiful places in this country. We only have 4 states left to visit out of the 48. They're all in the Deep South: Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And a few friends have told us just go to New Orleans and lie about the other 3 places.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we meet lots of people on the road. We strike up conversations with complete strangers at campsites or in stores or at restaurants, because everyone has a story to tell, and people love telling their story. So we talk with other people. We interview people. We met a man who was here we met this man in Idaho from the Netherlands. He was bicycling across the country on his bike, not a motorcycle, on a bicycle. He was going to be traveling cross-country on his bicycle. And he told us his story. He's multilingual. His wife of 30 years, I think it was, had just left him. And they used to be a team. They would travel together, and this was his first trip without her. And this worked on Dave for a while, and he ended up writing a song about this man. His name is Martin Kessels. So he wrote a song about him, and that's, I don't think it's not recorded. It's recorded, but it's not on any of the CDs yet. So anyway, Scrabbling Across the West, that's what we do. We play Scrabble across the country, actually across the world, because now we've been to Germany as well for Dave's shows and his tours, and we really enjoy it. So thanks for introducing us to podcasting there, Cory and Joe.
You're welcome. Joe has an eBay, but we don't have time to talk about it.
Actually, I don't want to talk about it. I got a negative this week, but I'll bitch about it next week. If you are interested, KRAYZ, you know the deal. You buy something from me, tell me you listen to this here podcast. I'll toss in something. It could be, well, let's see. I got here a card. It says, congratulations, this is a hand-drawn card exclusively for the Women Legends of DC Trading Cassette. Or more likely could be a copy of Worldwide News. I happen to have a bunch of them that Dangerous Dan the Snitch Moore gave to me, and I've been bringing them to the cons when I go. Maybe I'll give you one for free. So, or free shipping, I don't know. I got all sorts of stuff to give away.
Worldwide News.
Yeah.
That's a good idea for a web strip.
Nah, never last.
Nah, it won't last. So we'll go round robin, and because this is my favorite part of the show. No, not where I do a dramatic reading from Roget's Thesaurus. It's a freaking and geeking. Joe, one thing you are freaking on.
Hipwatch. It's happening. Friday I go in to find out when I get my new hip. That's me waving the towel. Yeah.
Will it be titanium?
I have no idea what it'll be.
Will it be adamantium?
I can't afford that. Jeez, I only live
Would
on
it
a
be
poor
vibranium?
podcaster. I don't know. I don't want things being absorbed into me. Maybe I'll just find one of them. Their stones everybody wants. No, in all seriousness, it's just I've talked about. I've got rheumatoid arthritis. I got levels of pain that I deal with. This is something new because it's not bearable anymore. I have to do 25 basic ballet moves just to find a. I went to work figuring, okay, I can do this. I'm just sitting in one spot. I might let him go. No, I was up and down more times than, I was going to make a political hooker joke, but I'm not going to do that. It's just, it's too much. I
and your internet doesn't like it either.
Nope. It's trying to edit me because I'm trying not to be a baby about it. But everybody I know that has a hip has said to me, "Oh, just do it. You'll kick yourself as to why you didn't do it sooner." I refuse to have my hip done. No, I did figured out what it was. So, Cory, you may have to find yourself a few a substitute peons to help you because there may be a few weeks that I may be unavailable. But who wants
like your internet is through this whole show.
Next. Yep, in and out.
Stephanie, what are you freaking on?
Not just for burgers anymore.
See, now I can't use my freaking thing that I was going to tell you about for tomorrow morning's out. I have a dermatology appointment tomorrow. My yearly checkup. But at least it's not my singing mammogram. You gotta love those. Those are great. But I have to go.
Singing mammogram. You have no cancer.
Again,
it's like my wife says. It's like my wife says, "Hey, let me grab your balls here and see how this feels for you."
Yeah, I have to go see my dermatologist twice a year, and tomorrow we find out if I still get a clean bill of health. So that appointment's at 10 in the morning, and I've been trying to stay out of the sun. I use sunscreen when I remember, and so I'm freaking out about that a little bit, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So sorry, it also has to be a medical thing.
Is Stephanie's one of those people who her on the beach is like putting a fork in the microwave?
Exactly. I'm an authentic redhead and must be kept out of direct sunlight at all times.
And all those freckles are one for each soul she has devoured.
Damn straight.
I am freaking out about how bad Joe's internet has been tonight because even with editing, this is going to sound like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he keeps cutting out, so it's hard for me to. I'm like, conversation.
I'm just.
Joe, what are you geeking on?
You didn't give a freaking, or is it just that?
Yeah, I did. Your goddamn internet.
I was going to tell everybody to run down to a bookstore that I was alerted to by someone I've never met, Sam Hurt Runch. Am I saying his name right?
Oh, Sam.
Yeah, but he said there was this bookstore in St. Paul that was going out of business, Addendum Books, and they are gone. Their last day was the 20th. So I was able to run down there and spent some time. Had to be careful, but I was looking through and I picked up a number of books. Some of them I probably would never have thought of, like they had The World of Edina by Mobius. I picked up a couple books that have to do with comic books. There's like one of them is The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You and 100,000 Worlds. And they were just, I was reading the thing and it said blah, 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 comic convention. And the other one was blah, blah, Comic Con. I was like, okay, I'm going to buy these. I found another Night Vale book, It Devours. And I had wanted to go back and visit before they closed. Unfortunately, the aforementioned hip made it so, you really don't feel like, okay, let's take a couple stops. And that one just really made me decide to sit down. But I was kind of going through, kind of like when, Cory, you and I went through Greg Ketter's paperback dungeon in Dreamhaven. Just look at titles because you won't have time to really look at what the book's about because there are a lot of books here. And the one I picked up I'm kind of interested in, Sucktown, Alaska. Didn't even pick, I just picked it up based on the title of the book. And that was kind of how I had to do that. I mean, I dropped about $100 and unfortunately the store is now gone. But just another one of the private bookstores that, it's tough. Some are making it, some are not. So I went in a bookstore and just pick up something. How about you, Steph? What you freak? Or no, we're in geeking now, aren't we?
Yes. What are you geeking on?
Say something.
I'm geeking on another upcoming. Fair. No. I know Dave and I are always traveling, and he's got a bunch of shows coming up, and we're going here, there, and everywhere for festivals. I'm geeking on the fact that it took me over a year to book this show for him in New York City. He's been around New York, but he's never been in New York City. And playing at this place is very, very cool because it's a big name place.
He's going to be on Stephen Colbert?
Oh, that would be awesome. Let me figure out how to get that done too while we're there.
See
Hold
if
on.
we can do a duet with the naked cowboy. That would be cool.
Oh, the guy with the underwear and you know what? That's actually a good idea because he has a hat just like that. And if I can get Dave in his underwear to stand beside that guy, that's not a bad idea.
That would be awesome.
Okay, let me see if I have to work on that with him. Yeah.
Now,
anyway,
when he goes to New York, because I can help him on that. I visited everything in Manhattan.
You just dropped out on me. All I got was when you visit New York, and I missed the rest.
Oh, no. Just does he catch all the comic shops, or is that kind of your thing?
Okay, it's funny you should say that, and I'll say this really quickly. Dave reads more comic books than I do. When we go to the library, he goes right for the graphic novel section. He picks up Golden Age, Silver Age. He wants to know the origins. He wants to go to all the comic book movies. He didn't read comics when he was a kid, so I've created a monster.
Cool.
So, yeah, he'll probably be wanting to go to the comic shop and stuff. It's funny because he knows more now about, he picks up, like, Green Arrow, like the original, and the Green Lantern, and did you know that, oh my God, and he's like in bed reading I'm like, okay. So it's really funny to see that he's really enjoyed.
Did you know that Green Arrow got crucified on a plane?
No, it was on a train.
Really funny.
It was with a goat. Goat boy.
When we're at a traffic signal and the Green Arrow comes on, I say, Green Arrow. And he's like, he's not just green. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh God, what have I done? So it's very amusing. So, we'll probably be hitting up a comic shop or two, but Dave will be playing at the Rockwood Music Hall in New York City, which is very exciting. And there'll be a lot of advertising for it. And then I'll be able to, it's October 16th. It's a Tuesday. But I'll be introducing him to Knishes because I try to Knish here in Minnesota. I moved here in 2005. No, 2000. Wait, did I move here? Yes, 2005. And I thought I found actual, real, authentic knishes in Minnesota. I was wrong. It wasn't. So I'll be introducing him to the actual knishes and egg creams and all things New York that I tell him about. So it'll be cool. It'll be a great time.
Your turn, Cory.
What I am geeking on, I announced it today because I put in for it last night at 10 o'clock and was told at 9 a.m. this morning. I am now full-time at the group home. No, this doesn't mean I am leaving. I'm not leaving the full-time job. What it is, with all the reorganization, they were like, here's all the jobs that are available, and one of them was full-time sleeping overnights, Sunday through Thursday. Now, that's fewer hours than I work now. No weekends. And fully benefited, even though I have better benefits at the full-time job. It's not a bad idea to double up on the 403B and the any of the investment and retirement stuff. So I am now full-time. I have 2 full-time jobs, 5 podcasts, and I will probably just explode when I turn 55.
Slacker.
But I will have weekends off. I have not had weekends off on a continuous basis since I've been an adult.
So you can go see Fozzie when it gets to First Avenue on September 8th.
Actually, I'm going to go see Mark Maron.
Wait, what? Wait, did you say Mark Maron? Is he coming to Minneapolis?
Yes, and the tickets are almost sold out. It's at Acme Comedy Company the second weekend in September. Go to the website now because 3 of the 7 shows are already sold out.
I am doing that right now. Oh, wait, are we even in town then?
I'm going to the Friday 10:30 show.
Oh, we're in Missouri. Never mind. Have fun.
I will. I adore Mark Maron. But I'm looking at things going, I could do stuff on weekends. I haven't done stuff on weekends in forever.
Wow.
So I've got all sorts of geekings for next week. But we've been going for 2.5 hours, and I have to leave for work.
See, that's one of the bad parts now, because now I got to watch my shenanigans, because Cory's like, oh, we got 15 minutes. He'll be doing countdowns like WWE Wrestling. 10 minutes.
And then Joe will, of course, be like the crowd at the Royal Rumble. 10, 9, 8.
Only when you're talking.
Oh, look, it's the Gobbiltygooker. Well, believe it or not, kids, you have listened to us blather on about funny books for 2.5 hours. And with Joe's internet problems, it'll probably edit down to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Sooner or later, you have to turn and face it. You made a mistake. Welcome to the human race, pal. It's your choice. If you let it, it will destroy you. But if you do let it, remember, you had a choice. You just picked the easiest way. You didn't fall into that bottle. You crawled in and pulled the cork in after you. Green Arrow, number 20, volume 2.
Ooh.
Any final words from our guest?
That was super impressive, Joe.
I like to leave them on a high note. I lie.
Thank you
my music.
so much. Thank you for having me on, though. That was awesome. So much fun with you guys.